Relying on sponsors, as we've established, relying on the way that you see the club going, which we'll talk about in a minute. It's such a volunteer-led organisation, which it has to be, I'm sure, at this level.
Yeah, it does.
How many full-timers have you actually got on the books?
The coaches, work as close to full-time as is possible, but predominantly everyone does everything in the spare time they have. Unfortunately, the spare time that they have is often needs to be about 30-40 hours a week. I can only speak from my experience. The fact the amount of hours that I put in to Biggleswade outside of my employed jobs is probably the same time-wise as it is for my employed work. So everyone that's involved in the club, does it in their spare time. No one is paid to do the job that we do, which again probably feeds into the fact that there are no egos at the club. There's not one person that's paid a huge amount of money, and there isn't one person that isn't paid anything. Everyone just pitches in. So from that point of view, there is no one that's really full-time, as it were, but at the same point in time everyone is working as if they are full-time, which is a great compliment to the club and a great compliment to the team as a whole, because everyone believes in the same thing and everyone really wants to push for the same thing. So it would be great if we did have the money to be able to bring in people full time to be able to do certain things, because the club wants to progress, there probably are certain things even now that things could be done on a full-time basis that would benefit the club massively. At this moment in time, we're having to work within our limitations. It's just our limitations being increasingly stretched because we need to commit more time and more effort to get to where we want to get to.
You mentioned the coaches. Christian Carlas, who we've interviewed on numerous occasions, very talented. Knows the game inside out, working towards obviously bettering himself and the club. How did you sell the dream, if you like, to these guys to come on board, move from Spain and join Biggleswade?
That was purely Guillaume. I mean, he's the director of football. I had a sit down and had a meeting with him at when he came on board and discussed what his role would be. He was very sure about what he wanted his role to be. And again, when you've got someone that comes in with that much experience, that much knowledge, that much talent, you leave them to get on with it. So when Guillaume said what he wanted to do, just like, go do it.
It must have been quite scary for you, was it? Sitting there, hearing all this football talk, like I say, with all credit to Biggleswade United, to go from where it was, the chairman walks out, the physio steps up to the mark, contacts Guillaume Balaguer, he comes on board, and then suddenly the rise has been unbelievable. And for you to be in all this, it must have been quite daunting, was it?
Yes and no. I mean, to be honest with you, I'm one of those people that if I get involved in something, I want to get involved with it so that it can be the best that it can be. I'm not interested in getting involved with something just to see it survive. I'm interested in getting involved with it because I want it to really progress and to really move forward. Now, obviously, by the time I contacted Guillaume, I hadn't really been in the role for that long. It had been 7 or 8 months, something along those lines. So I hadn't got years worth of working with the club to sort of feel worried about, as it were. So to be able to bring Guillaume on board, it was very much, okay, this is what we want to do, this is the process, this is part of the plan. If we get Guillaume on board, he can look after this can be his thing, because this is what he's worked for the last 20 or 30 years to do. With the best in the world, as everyone does, I have opinions on football, but I'm by no means the most qualified person to be able to direct those sorts of things. That's Guillaume's job, and Guillaume has done an unbelievable job in bringing in the coaches that he has. I mean, the coaches that he brought on board, you really shouldn't get coaches that well qualified at this level. I mean, by and large, most of the coaches at this level maybe have a FA sort of level 2 coaching badge. You get some UEFA B coaching badges, and in our first team we've got like 2 UEFA Pro licensed coaches, we've got a UEFA A licensed coach, we've got I think 2 UEFA B 2 UEFA B licensed coaches. You don't get that at this level, and that really is now what's paying dividends with the team. They're really starting to progress. So it's been a massive testament to Guillaume to be able to do that and to have that vision to say, okay, even though we're at this level, this is what we're aiming for. This is what we're going to bring in. These are the coaches. This is the standard that I want. And he's had that belief ever since he came into the club, and he's stuck to that. And so far, it's paying dividends.
So it leads me on to, you must have a plan. Most businesses, clubs, whatever, have a 1, 2, 3, 5 year plan. Is that the same for Biggleswade? And if so, where would you like to see the club in, let's say, the next 3 to 5 years?
I would say yes and no, in the sense that I very much have an idea about where I want the club to be in the next 5 years. How we get there has to be a certain amount of flexibility, because things at this level, football at this level, can be a little bit unstable. We're trying to do it in a very different way and be very much more stable than the clubs around, so that we can plan for the future. So it does need to be a certain amount of flexibility in everything that we do, but there are very much targets that we're trying to hit at certain periods of time. We're having regular meetings to be able to put goals in place and put the things in place that we need to do, the timelines in place that we need to do in order to hit those goals. So we probably have, every 6 months we'll have 3 or 4 things that we want to work on during that time. And then we think, okay, if we want to achieve that, what do we need to do to achieve it? What do we need to be hitting by this period of time? So there is a fair degree of structure, but it's not overly rigid, because ultimately things change. If we somehow lose players for whatever reason, then we need to make changes on the pitch. If we somehow gain other sponsorship, or someone comes in with money, that's going to change the dynamic completely. So we need to have a certain amount of flexibility in what we do. In terms of where would I like the club to be in 5 years, I would probably be looking at the Southern Prem, looking towards going into the sort of in a position to maybe progress towards the Conference South. I've very much got an idea that I would like us to be in the Conference National within 10 years. How realistic is that at this stage? We're not 100% sure, because we've got a long way to go. We need to develop the ground. If we want to get to that standard, it may mean us moving to another facility, and again, that costs money and support and all the rest of it to do that. That you need obviously huge council support to move grounds completely, because you need the land, all these sorts of things. So I've got an idea about where I want the club to be. We need to sit down, obviously plan that out longer term. The first thing we need to do is get out of this division. Obviously, we need to plan for the next season, and that's what we're doing now. We're starting to sit down over these next couple of weeks, plan for next season, plan these next 6 months out, plan the next 12 months out, next 18 months. By what do we need to do to get where we want to be for the summertime next year, where hopefully we will have got promotion. But obviously those sorts of things need to be planned out fairly systematically.
So objective for this year, in all honesty, is, pardon the cliche, mid-table obscurity. Would you be happy with that?
No, purely from the basis of how we've seen the results change over the last 5 or 6 weeks. I mean, we're 9 games unbeaten now in the league, 8 wins and 1 draw. The start of the season was challenging, purely for the fact that we had a big turnover in players. So we brought in loads. We had to bring in more, a lot more players through the sort of trials at the start of the season. We brought in a whole new coaching team, and it took a while for that dynamic to fit, and for the players to understand the coaches, and the coaches to understand the players, and the different style of football that we're trying to play. That took time to gel, which you've touched on previously with your interview with Guillaume. That took a while for that to happen. We're at the stage now whereby we're really starting to progress on in the league, and I don't see any reason why those performance levels should drop now. The players have developed a way of playing. They've developed confidence in the way that they're playing. Unless we start to develop loads of injuries, for which can happen, then I don't see any reason why we can't continue to progress. Maybe not winning 9 games in a row, because obviously that is very difficult, but there's no reason why we should have a big drop off in those performances. So I think if we could finish in and around sort of 6th, 7th, that would be, considering the start we had, I think that would be not an unreasonable target. And I think we need to be in that position, because at the end of the day, if people are going to take us seriously to push for the title next season, and players looking in from wherever they are, looking at the table thinking, okay, if I join Biggleswade United, if they're in 10th position, realistically, are they going to make a jump to win the league? If we're in 6th or 7th position or 5th, that aim is more realistic. So we've got to be pushing, because ultimately where we want to get to, you need to have certain standards in place.
So promotion really at the end of next season is the minimum objective?
Yeah, in my mind, definitely, because ultimately, again, if we want to get to where we want to get to within a certain period of time, we have to hit certain targets. So again, if it doesn't happen, it's not the end of the world, but it is very much a case whereby we don't want to be stagnant where we are. And obviously there are a lot of things going on behind the scenes. We're developing a lot of things, and we've got the wall here of all the various different players that have been with the shirt. So we're working really hard behind the scenes to amplify the profile of the club. But if we're not doing it on the pitch, then it doesn't look great as a club. Yes, you can clubs out there can make a lot of noise and show, we've got this person involved, we're doing all these great things, but ultimately it comes down to what happens on the pitch. Football is very much a results-driven business, whether it be professionally or whether it be more down in the semi-professional level. It's if a coach doesn't do particularly well and starts losing games, there's pressure. And that coach may rise above it and start win again, or they may sort of get released from the club. So no matter what level you're at, football is a results-driven business, and we need to be producing on the pitch so that we can back up everything we're doing off the pitch.
The academy setup is going to obviously be key to this continued success.
Yeah, I mean it's got to be. I mean, unless you've got hundreds and hundreds of millions of pounds to be able to just splash at the first team and maintain success over a period of time, then the academy is key. And personally, from my point of view, I would rather see players develop from the academy through to the first team and then being given time to develop, rather than the academy players not having the time to be able to develop, and the club just bringing in players and just supplementing with that, and those players from the local area that we're trying to bring through, them not having the chances to get to the first team because we're just bringing in players. That from my point of view, that isn't where I want the club to go, and I'm pretty sure that's not where the club wants to go. With everyone else that's involved, and everyone wants to see the academy grow and develop, because ultimately if you're building an academy and that's what your viewpoint is and that's where you want the club to go, then it doesn't make sense to put in all that work and then there'd be no light at the end of the tunnel for the players, because if you're just filling it with players that you brought in, then what's the point in having an academy? It doesn't really make sense. If you're not going to have those players coming through to the first team, then it doesn't really make sense, other than trying to sell them off and somehow make a bit of a profit. But again, I would much rather see those players come through from the local area, play for the first team, do well, as much as anything, because it helps build the community. We're very much a community-centred club here. We want to build the community around us and be very much integrated with the community. And I think if you can build things like a successful academy, it goes a long way to achieving that.
Chris, totally agree. Let's hope in 5 years' time we look back on this interview and went,
we've
exceeded expectations. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.